Hi, 5th graders. This is Miss Advina. We are ready to start a short history of a special plant, Part 2, Identify Main Idea and Key Details. Before we start this, though, I want to go back to Part 1. When I left off with you, you had done paragraphs 4 through 7, early cultivation. I want to see if you got the same key details I picked out. Native Americans improved crop yield with selective breeding and the Three Sisters method. When planted together, corn, beans, and squash help each other grow. Native Americans taught European settlers how to grow corn, and settlers found ways to grow corn that matured faster and produced even greater yields. All of those added up to the main idea: Native Americans first cultivated corn using selective breeding and the Three Sisters method to maximize yields, and in turn they taught English settlers how to grow this new crop. I kind of made a mess of that sentence. Let me try that again. Native Americans first cultivated corn using selective breeding and the Three Sisters method to maximize yields, and in turn they taught English settlers how to grow this new crop. So if this is what you got, then we need to move on, and if this isn't, then go ahead and ask me some questions. Come over to me and say, Miss Advina, I would really like to be in your group and look back through these because I'm not quite understanding. This is where you have to be academically honest with not only yourself, but with me. Let me know how you're doing. Send me a message. Let me know if you got this or if you need some extra help and some extra practice. For now, we're going to be getting some of that extra help and practice because I'm going to be going over the next part and modeling the next section. So your objective is I will be able to read to identify and annotate key details again, use key details to determine a main idea, and share my thinking with peers. So let's go back over here, and we are now looking at the next section. It's not turning the page, so I'm going to have to turn it myself by clicking on here. Okay, so for this section, I'm going to be reading paragraphs 8 through 10. So I'm reading the Corn Belt. The subheading says the Corn Belt. I'll be reading this section for us. Now, just like before, I'm going to have the computer read this part if I can make that happen.
When European settlers arrived...
Let's see if we can get over here. Nope, it's not going to let me, and that's okay. I'll go ahead and read it out loud to you guys. The Corn Belt. In the United States, most of the corn was, and still is, grown in the Midwest or Corn Belt. This region's climate has the hot summers and regular rainfall that corn needs to grow 3 meters or 10 feet tall. In the past, if a farmer grew corn year after year in the same field, the soil would get worn out and the corn harvest would get smaller and smaller. To combat this problem, farmers rotated crops, planting different crops each year. One common pattern or rotation of crops is to plant soybeans one year and corn the next. Soybean plants add nutrients back into the soil. Many farms in the Corn Belt also raise cattle or hogs. These animals eat both corn and corn stalks. In the fall, farmers put animals out in the fields to eat any leftover corn. The animals' waste help fertilize the ground for the next season. So I'm going to go back to paragraph 8, and I'm going to get my annotating tool. It looks like I already have it out. And the subheading is the Corn Belt. So I will look for information about the Corn Belt in this first paragraph. I read that Corn Belt is a nickname for the Midwest. And I can tell that because it says Midwest or Corn Belt. So these are interchangeable words. I read that Corn Belt is the nickname for the Midwest, the region where most corn is grown. I'll look for key details about the Corn Belt. In the second sentence, I will underline hot summers and regular rainfall that corn needs, as these key details describe the Corn Belt. So hot summers and regular rainfall that corn needs. So these are features of this region. Now I'm looking at paragraph 9. This paragraph, right here, paragraph 9, this paragraph explains how farmers once solved the problem of soil becoming worn out from growing corn year after year. That is the main idea. Key details that support this idea include rotated crops, plant soybeans one year and corn the next, and soybean plants add nutrients back into the soil. So I'm going to underline some of those things. So the soil would get worn out. There's our problem. And here's our solution. Farmers rotated crops, planting different crops, and a common pattern, or rotation of crops. And that looks like it's soybean one year, corn the next. So soybeans and corn. And then it tells why soybean plants add nutrients back into the soil. Corn takes it out, soybean puts it back. So this looks like a problem solution paragraph. It tells us that the problem is that the soil gets worn out. The solution is to rotate the plants, giving it a pattern or rotation of soybeans and corn so that soybean plants can add nutrients back into the soil that the corn takes. So now I'm going on to paragraph 10. In this paragraph, I read about another idea, how farmers also used animals to help keep soil healthy. Sentences 3 and 4 have the key details. So I'm going into here's my paragraph 10. They raise cattle or hogs, and these animals eat both corn and corn stalks. And the farmers put animals out in the fields to eat any leftover corn. And the animal waste help fertilize the ground for the next season. In reviewing my annotations so far, I can state a main idea for this section. It looks like farmers in America's Corn Belt, where most corn is produced, have traditionally protected the soil in cornfields by rotating crops and allowing livestock to feed on leftover corn. So now I want to go back over to, and this was the purpose and annotate. We read the Corn Belt, paragraphs 8 through 10, in a short history of a special plant. And we're describing the Corn Belt and how corn is cultivated there. So here's the key details that I found. Actually, we're not going to actually put that into the chart. Now we're going to go into paragraphs 11 through 17 and identify how the cultivation of corn has changed over time. And we're going to annotate and underline key details as we read. I'm going to give you guys 3 to 5 minutes to read and annotate. Work independently on paragraphs 11 through 13. And creating this chart in your OneNote or on a piece of paper, you need the section, key details, main idea. And you're going to be reading The Rise of Industrial Farming, paragraphs 11 through 13. You're going to be writing down the key details and the main idea. And then you'll be able to work with your groups to do paragraphs 11 through 17, The Rise of Industrial Farming. So you're doing 11 through 13 independently, and then as a group you'll be doing paragraphs 11 through 17, adding on those extra 4 paragraphs. So go ahead and pause the video, and I want you to go ahead and get started on that.
Corn belt.
Okay, welcome back. In case you needed to have this read to you, I'm going to go ahead and have it read. My voice is going, so I'm going to have the computer read it for me.
Corn for grain. 2010 production by county for selected states.
The rise of industrial farming. With industrialization in the 1800s, new farming methods and technology began to change agriculture. American farmers continued to strive to grow strong, healthy corn plants that yield as much as possible. In the late 1800s, scientists developed hybrid corn. Fertilizing one variety of corn with pollen from another variety makes hybrids. The result is a new type of corn plant that is stronger and able to produce more seeds than either parent plant. This corn mixed favorable genetic traits and led to healthier varieties of corn and higher, faster yields. As more farmers used hybrid corn, production rose. In 1933, the average yield was 33 bushels per acre. In 1997, the yield had increased to 127 bushels per acre. Today, corn is a staple crop of the Midwestern United States. 95% of corn acreage is planted with hybrid corn, and the average annual yield is nearly 159 bushels per acre. Almost all corn in the United States grows from hybrid seeds. Hybrid corn may even contain genetic material, or DNA, from other species altogether. Scientists have added DNA that makes corn more resistant to insects and drought. However, this altered GMO corn also has its drawbacks, such as introducing allergens and toxins to food, as well as depleting the nutritional value of a crop. According to the National Corn Growers of America, NCGA, more than 300 million metric tons of corn are harvested each year in the United States. However, today's industrial farming practices have led to a monoculture where growers raise one type of crop year after year. The success of hybrid corn and soybeans has led many growers to solely raise one cash crop instead of a variety. This is good practice for earning money now. However, it could hurt profits and productivity in the future. The concentration on a single crop depletes the soil. The lack of variety is at odds with how soil functions and maintains balance. The invasion of one disease or pest could wipe out all of the corn crops.
1. GM.
Okay, boys and girls. Now, before you move on from paragraphs 11 through 15, I want you to take a moment and really look at this map and this graph. What is it trying to tell you? So over here, it's the bushels, not estimated. 1 million, 1,500,000 to 4 million. So this is telling you how many bushels is being grown in each area. So the darker the green, the more bushels. So we can see that there's a lot of corn being grown right here, whereas there isn't quite so much over here, or it's not estimated. But we see the yellows, and it tends to be right about here. So I want you to really take a look at that and realize that they are citing a source, the USDA. So even in most informational text, even the ones that you write, there's some type of source that's cited. So this takes the pressure off of the author, because that makes the author not the all-knowing. She's bringing in sources for you. Same thing over here. I'm looking at this and it says the United States is the largest corn producer in the world. So looking at 2003, we can see bushels and billions. So when did they grow the most corn? What year? When did it decline? And what might have caused that decline? These should be sparking you to kind of think about, what is this graph telling you? And why does it go up and down? And why does it peak right over here? Now, I cut this off before it finished this footnote. One GMO is a genetically modified organism. So that's where scientists go in and change things about a crop or a seed. They're altering the DNA. Okay, now going on, I want to actually finish paragraph 16 and 17. So follow along.
Monoculture, pros and cons. Advantages: reduced plant competition, control of unprofitable organisms, reduction of costs by limitation of specialized machinery, maximization of profit from the growing of high gross margin crops. Disadvantages: increased vulnerability to pests, increased need for insecticide, increased vulnerability to disease outbreaks, erosion and fertility affected by nutrient depletion of soil, lack of biodiversity at odds with system balance, nutrient runoff more likely to pollute groundwater supplies.
As Miguel A. Altieri, an insect biologist at UC Berkeley, explains, until about 4 decades ago, yields were modest but stable. Production was safeguarded by growing more than one crop or variety in space and time in a field as insurance against pest outbreaks or severe weather. Inputs of nitrogen were gained by rotating major field crops with legumes. In turn, rotation suppressed insects, weeds, and diseases by effectively breaking the life cycles of these pests. A typical Corn Belt farmer rotated corn with several crops, including soybeans and small grain. In these types of farming systems, signs of environmental degradation were seldom evident. As farming modernized, he explained, ecological principles were ignored and/or overridden. Today, farming systems are extremely productive and competitive, but they also bring a variety of economic, environmental, and social problems. For this reason, many biologists, like Altieri, suggest a return to the practice of three sisters planting or crop rotation.
Okay, I'm not going to go on over to that many varieties of corn, but now you've heard the entire text. So that brings us over to 17. Now I want to go back to what our job is. Your job is to read paragraphs 11 through 13. You should have read through to find the key details and the main idea. And then as a group, I want you to go through paragraphs 11 through 17. There is some overlap here. Keep that in mind. The rise of industrial farming, paragraphs 11 through 17. The rise of industrial farming, paragraphs 11 through 13. I want you to do this on your own because you need to know how well you're doing with this skill. And if you don't do it alone, then you're not going to know if you're really understanding it later. So go ahead and pause the video, and I want you to go through 11 through 13 and find the key details that are important to really understanding the rise of industrial farming. Welcome back. So some of the key details that you should have come up with were: hybrid corn is stronger and able to produce more seeds. Hybrid corn increases production. Genetically modified GMO corn is more resistant to insects and drought. And GMO corn has some drawbacks. So we can take these 4 key details and combine them into a main idea. Industrialized farming led to the rise of hybrid corn, which has dramatically increased production, but has also made corn both less safe and healthy in some ways. Okay, boys and girls, I want you to go ahead and work with your group and finish this up, and I'll show you what's underneath these shades as soon as you're done. We'll do this as a group. Remember, your objective is to be able to read, to identify, and annotate key details, use key details to determine a main idea, and share your thinking with peers. Happy reading.